yeah, next
one. You have a tremendous following on YouTube. What are some of the things that you do to optimize your videos when you upload them? Do you create link wheels in YouTube, the tags you use? What are the things you do to optimize those videos?
First of all, I would have to say there are two things that I believe are the most important. Number one is the thumbnail, because visual is way more important than, for example, the headline, which is text, right? Visual and image. And studies show, according to science, that human beings are drawn to faces of other human beings, right? So if you can have a big freaking face in that thumbnail, look at the most popular YouTubers. All of them have their face with a strong emotion. You want that emotional response, which causes somebody to click, right? But then if you don't get what you were expecting, and that's clickbait, and then people will give you a thumbs down and leave a negative comment. So make sure that the thumbnail is true, but try to maximize the emotional value and try to add a face in there if you want. And don't make it small, make it big, because people are using a cell phone. It's already small. If you can't really see that face, it's going to be difficult. Make it as big as you can. So the first is thumbnail. Spend some time with that. Make sure you have a good, nice looking thumbnail that you can see from a distance too. Minimize it, make it small. Can you still see that face? And that's a good thing. But then people are drawn to the face, and then they're going to read the description or the name of the video. What is this video about? What does it promise? Why should it be worth my time to click this video and maybe spend 15 minutes of my life? So make sure that the headline shows them what they're going to get. 3 hip mobility exercises to help you kick higher or something like that. Numbers don't lie, right? See if you can include a number there. Instead of saying awesome hip mobility exercises, go with 5 awesome hip mobility. The more specific you can be, the better. So, thumbnail and title. And then, of course, deliver on that promise in the video. And there you have the perfect triangle. Video itself is the last part. Question in the back? Influencers.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about influencers? Your best way of really finding them, which platform you go to. And it's not only finding one. I need to find many in a lot of different markets. Martial arts, dance, gymnastics, comedy, different things.
There are these companies that make money on influencers. They sign up a lot of influencers, and I've been contacted by many of these companies. And then they help people like you find them. So they act as the middleman, and they take a cut out of the money that you pay the influencer. So maybe you can use one of those companies, because if you have many different areas, like you said you have, gymnastics and martial arts and whatever, then maybe it's difficult for you to find these different influencers on your own. Unless you're already following them, and maybe you're already a fan of somebody's work, and then of course it's easy, just reach out to them. But I would suggest that you contact and there are so many of these companies, and they can really help you. Because I've been contacted by a lot of them, so I know that there are many of them.
So we wanted to ask if you have any kind of tips, strategies, tactics, just talking points that really help improve your visibility with that demographic, and how we can successfully talk to them, teach us to be better communicators. And I understand you can't do that in 5 minutes, but anything you can share is deeply appreciated. Thank you.
So for women specifically, first of all, there are different people on different platforms. Women tend to lean more towards other platforms than men do, in general. And you can find this on Google. For example, Pinterest, great for women, if you want to reach women. Because there are more women on Pinterest than there are men. So I suggest you Google to see on what platforms are there more women than men, or a majority of women. And maybe try to create more content for those platforms. And then I think that, in general, women respond differently to content than men do. So I think you should be For example, studies show that if you do a post and you say the word think, then men will respond better to that. But if you use the word feel, then women will respond better. So just thinking about the way you write things, I think will have a big impact. And again, you can find those types of studies, how different people react differently to different words, because it's all about using words. Doesn't matter if you say those words or write those words. And maybe, this is just a speculation, but maybe color. Maybe women respond differently to different colors than men do. Maybe men like red more than women, I don't know, or orange, strong colors that capture attention. Maybe women lean more towards green. I'm not a woman, I don't know, I'm just guessing. Maybe you should ask a woman.
We will.
That's my last tip.
Thank you.
Oh, sir. So I'm currently on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and what I have a purpose for each one. Right now, I'm using Instagram for my students specifically, so to kind of remarket to them and their friends and families. I'm using hashtags. I'm also using YouTube for my how-tos, and I'm starting to dabble into blogging as well. And then Facebook for building community. Am I on the right track as far as that goes? And then what can I do to enhance that? And then the second part to my question would be on my YouTube page, how to best utilize the playlists. So like using that as like a channel and then having different programs.
Yeah, you're on the right track with that one, but I don't think you're on the right track with the first one. I don't think you should create... The content that you're creating for the different platforms seems to be vastly different because you have different purposes with each platform, like you said. I think you should create the same, you should repurpose that content. It will take way less time, you will save a lot of energy instead of trying to come up with new things for each platform. Create one piece of content and then see how you can distribute that to different platforms in different ways. For example, you can't put a 30-minute video on Instagram unless you use the new feature IGTV, right? Which just launched like 2 or 3 days ago. So now you can. So I think that it's way better to create one big piece of content, then break it up, and then see how you can post that on different platforms so that it's tailored to each platform. Because different platforms of social media are like different neighborhoods of a city. One neighborhood is not like the next. If you try to do the same thing everywhere, it's not going to work. It's not going to resonate. So all you do is adjust, but it's the same basic fundamental piece of content. You're just using different ways of expressing it on these different platforms. Instead of trying to create different, completely new content for each platform. Does that make sense? That's what I would do. I'm not saying it is the best or only or right way, but that would save a lot of time and I think it will actually work better. And then your second question was about creating playlists on YouTube. And YouTube is something that I've started learning a lot recently because like I said, I think there's a second wave. So I noticed that I needed to learn it. And I didn't have any idea about playlists until like last year. So I started studying them, started trying to learn them. And turns out YouTube likes when a user stays on that platform. And the longer you can make a person stay on YouTube, the more likely it is that your videos will keep showing because YouTube recognizes that your videos help them keep people on the platform and maybe they will click on the ads so YouTube make money on them. So create playlists with the intent of making people watch more videos. And you can do them in many different ways. You can have a theme. For example, let's say I have one playlist that's called Karate Nerd in Okinawa. So I go to Okinawa, I visit different dojos, I train with grandmasters, and I post those episodes. Sort of like Netflix would do, a TV series with different episodes, and I upload them as a playlist because I want people to watch them in that order. But then you could also do a playlist where it doesn't really matter what order people watch them. For example, technical instruction videos, a tutorial, right? You could teach them a sidekick in one video and an uppercut in another video. It doesn't matter which one you watch first, right? But they should still be in the same playlist because it's the same theme. And then you try to create a couple of different playlists that you just add to your channel. And hopefully people will start watching that instead of sporadically watching random videos and then losing interest and then going to somebody else's channel. So that's my advice.
But just an average day in the life of just Enkamp, what it entails, like what are some of the things you try to get done on a day-to-day basis? Do you have any routines, habits that help propel all the things you're making do?
Lots of coffee. No, I'm just kidding. No, I actually made 2 videos called A Day in the Life of a Karate Nerd because I got this question a lot. So go watch that video. I'm saving all of you time. Time is money, right? No, but seriously though, I wake up whenever I like. I've never had an alarm since I quit school because I hate alarms. And I like being in control of my own time. I like autonomy. So I wake up maybe, 8, 9, 10 if it's a bad day. I have my cup of coffee and breakfast and I go train. Number 1 is always training. Working on myself. Trying to improve things that I need to improve, something that my coach has told me that I need to work on, or something that I recognize myself that I need to work on. And then after training, it's lunch, because I need to recover from that workout, or that work-in, depending on how I'm training at that moment. And what I train depends on what my goals are for that specific period. Periodization, sports science, is something very important. If you train the same way all the time, you're not going to get anywhere, right? So my training looks vastly different depending on what I'm going to do with that training, right? If I have a competition or a demonstration or a grading or whatever, right? And then after lunch, usually I work. That's when my real work starts, meaning I sit behind the laptop for a couple of hours and do the boring stuff, answering emails. That's not always boring, but sometimes. And then paying bills and that kind of stuff. You guys know. And then I start teaching at the academy. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 hours or so. Teaching kids, adults, weapons class, that kind of stuff. Maybe before that I'll do a private session. For example, I have a few students now in the national team. They're younger. If they're competing at the World Cadet Championships or something, then we work extra with them. And then after the last session in the evening, maybe it's around 9 p.m., either I train myself a second session, depends on, again, in what period I am of my own macro or micro blocks of periodization. And then I go home and eat my dinner. And basically that is a day in the life of me in general. But since I travel a lot and I do many other projects, then there are variations. Hope that helps.
But any comments or any suggestions to develop a program that starts simple and develops with the student, or just describe how your school is structured so that you can have longer retention and not run the risk of overwhelming your students with information and technique.
I think education is important, understanding how people learn. If you overwhelm somebody, then obviously in the beginning that's not a good thing, but maybe later you have to do that. There is a Japanese concept known as shu-ha-ri, 3 stages of mastery or learning. Shu, the first step, means that you follow. You do exactly what you're told, monkey see, monkey do. You just copy, right? You don't even know the meaning of what you're doing. And then the next step is that you break free. You try to smoothen out the edges. Maybe, for example, if you learn the alphabet, maybe you don't write it the exact same way today as when you learned it back in school, right? Now it's your way, right? And then the last step is to go beyond that. Maybe you start cross-training. Maybe you try different things. Maybe you do a 360 backflip kick. I don't know. I can't do those things. But at that last stage, that's usually when I think that sophistication and going deeper becomes more and more important. Otherwise, people lose interest. They can definitely lose interest if it's too much in the beginning. They can also lose interest if it's too little in the end. And you don't want to get there. You want to keep the journey going, right? So sometimes you give them a lot, sometimes you give them little. It's kind of like when you're cooking, when you have a recipe, right? At first you follow the recipe step by step. That was the first stage, shu in Japanese. And then you memorize the recipe. That's the next step, ha in Japanese. You don't even need to look at it anymore. And the last step, ri, is when you transcend. You can maybe change an ingredient to make it your way, right? And that's the last step, known as ri in Japanese. So I think that if you follow these progressive steps towards mastery of learning and teaching, known as shuhari, then I think that you're usually on the right path. Another way to put it is more practical maybe. If you teach a technique, first you do it in isolation, then you do it in integration, and then you do it in improvisation. Hope that helps.
In the Olympics. The reason I asked that, Taekwondo is an Olympic sport around 20 years, and it has evolved tremendously from the original Taekwondo training and philosophy now to the modern day Olympic sports.
Yes.
And it just
Keeps getting worse.
I would say, well, it's debatable because I'm an international referee for World Taekwondo also.
Yeah.
So I see the pros and cons of it. Some there are things I like it,
Yep.
and there are things that I don't.
Yep.
So what do you think about now karate in the Olympics in 2020 Tokyo?
Yep.
Thank you.
So whenever there's a new opportunity, there will be people who don't like that because it threatens old dogma. And the Olympics are here. There's nothing you can do about it. So use it to your advantage because it's gonna happen in 2 years. So why not say that you're an Olympic karate school now? When people go searching for how their kid can become an Olympic champion, maybe you could be the answer. But that's not the whole story. Because a lot of people don't like that karate has become a sport. And I think it's the same with Taekwondo, like you say. Because we lose a lot of the traditional values like humility, respect, integrity, sportsmanship, which should be there, but it's not always there. And self-defense, for example. I know many karate champions who couldn't punch their way out of a wet paper bag because you cannot use full contact in the Olympic style karate. It's just skin touch. Still, knockouts happen, but sometimes only. So I think that more and more people will start moving towards that Olympic dream because there's a lot of money and sponsors in the Olympics, right? But that will also mean that more and more people will move away from it because of the negative side that they don't like, which leaves another opportunity or a space on the opposite end of the spectrum for those who want to learn more old school, traditional, practical karate that is not based on defeating an opponent in an arena, but maybe civilian self-defense instead, which is way different, right? Yes, plus the philosophy and mindset of the traditional martial arts, which can provide something greater than sport can in some cases. So I think this is both good and both good and bad. Depends on how you see it. But I try to maximize this opportunity on both ends of the spectrum because I'm a karate nerd. So that's my answer.
Where do you get your ideas for the content that you do post? Do you look at the success of previous articles or previous videos to get ideas of what people are really enjoying that you put out?
So the first question was, where do I come up with content ideas? And the true answer is, excuse my French, I pulled them out of my ASS. Because when you've been practicing karate since before you could walk, there is so much stuff that you accumulate throughout the years. And if you love learning, then usually you love teaching. Because you want to help other people enjoy the experience of learning. So I have a lot of exercises and concepts and principles and ideas that I'm eager to share with people. And it's simply easier for me to share them with people than to keep them inside. And that is why I'm a content machine. And I love it. So I would say that is my answer. I'm not sure how helpful that is to you. So another idea is to ask your students, what are their greatest challenges or difficulties? And maybe somebody will say, well, I can never get that sidekick to snap. Well, then you do a video about that. Or somebody says, my hips are so tight. Well, then you do a video about that. Somebody says that their neck hurts when they're doing this exercise. And well, then you do a video about how to relieve their neck pain. Whatever your students have problems with, if you can help them fix that problem through your content, they're going to love it. And other people will love it too. Because I don't think your students are alone.
Great. Tell us a little bit about what your primary inspirations were, because you're in a field that's not necessarily known for innovation, and you move forward in so many different ways. What were some of the early inspirations that affected you?
Well, it would be strange if I didn't mention my parents, because the first impression usually lasts, right? And that's why it's so important to have a good instructor when you start learning, because otherwise you will have those bad habits for life, right? So my first inspiration was my parents, and the fact that they always encouraged me to go beyond, right, and look outside. And it was never like, because they were my teachers and owners of the martial arts school, and they never said that you can't go over there, or you can't go to that tournament, or no, you can't go train with him or her. It was never like that. It was almost the opposite. Hey, you should go to this seminar over there. We'll pay for the flight. Just go there, learn something, bring it back. And that's why we always have this culture in our school of bringing stuff in and making it a part of what we do. And then maybe we throw it out if it doesn't work, or we keep it. Like Bruce Lee said, right? You try to bring in as much as possible, and then you keep the good stuff and you throw away the bad stuff. And so that I would have to say has always been the inspiration, because that's the way I was brought up. And I just kept doing that ever since then. And I started to seek out people who were like that. And that brought me here, to meet all of you. And that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after the end of this session,